Okay, yeah, this is where we're doing this. Oh my gravy. Gravy, Dante. You ever been to a Thanksgiving dinner? Holy cow. Hey, Dante. Come. Good. What's up, y'all? My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. Today is the 11th of March, 2026. This is In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, one of our fourths where we let dogs stay natural. Okay, let's get into this. So, this video's title is Dogs Need to Look Up. Okay, In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, what do? Well, the same thing we do on the main side of In the Image Clothing Company. We allow the human body to work over there. Okay, another one of our fourths. That's our slogan, allowing the body to work. So, we're a clothing company because anything that clothes the human being is clothing, okay? So for the dogs here on In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, we let dogs stay natural, specializing in purebred standard poodles, but giving information that applies to all dogs across the earth, and any animals that it would apply to as well. Anything clothing a dog is clothing a dog, you know, collars, leashes, harnesses, slip leads, bandanas, anything tied on or around the dog or placed onto the dog in any way is clothing the dog the way that God clothes the fields with grass. We're designed in the image of God, okay, in the image of Jesus Christ. Here's your clothing company. So, these dogs are just domesticated animals. We take them out of their natural environment. And we place them into this modern man-made world that we place on top of God's natural earth. Wow. So the dogs are getting damaged, just as we do as human beings, with oversized clothing, imbalances of any kind in clothing, ropes introduced to the body like shoelaces or drawstrings. This is the same thing with dogs. We get into chronic patterning. Our bodies get damaged. Bone spurs build up in our bodies, and scar tissue, just problems in the body where it happens. We live in a right-handed world. The dogs are dealing with all these things in the ways that they are. Hey, Dante, come. You gotta be in the video, bud. I know there's not the most ideal spot for you to lay right here. Oh my goodness, you love that. So, dogs. Yeah, this video's title here on In the Image Clothing Company Poodles is Dogs Need to Look Up. And I'll discuss it because we've got a lot of things going on, like heavy collars, imbalanced collars, weight-wise or just fit-wise, loose collars, you know, collars need to be snug. Here's a couple videos on the main side of In the Image Clothing Company applying to human beings and dogs. The importance of snug collars and keeping collars centered, okay? For human beings, we discussed this. We've got In the Image Clothing Company's dreaded collar seam modification. Anytime there's anything different or discrepant in the collar of our top, we could call it a seam, you know. Collar seams, though, are often in clothing nowadays, so we just need things to sit evenly around the circumference of our neck. We give a lot of free modifications under In the Image Clothing Company. You wouldn't have to purchase In the Image Clothing Company clothing or In the Image Clothing Company's dog products to allow your bodies to work. All right. Free modifications. That was such a real cough, and it sounded fake to me. There's airplane noise, all right? Blunt, bold, raw, and real In the Image Clothing Company. Here's the thing. Dogs need to look up, all right? We've got a lot of things going on, like I'm saying, because you can tie ropes around a dog's neck. You know what I mean? With a bandana, for example. And you can twist the dog's entire neck and body, whole head and down to their tail. The whole spine of the dog is from the tip of their tail to the base of their skull, okay? So, yeah, we've got a video here under In the Image Clothing Company's main side, except that's not where we are. Under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, titled The Importance of Even Knots on Dog Accessories. And we're tying knots in things like a bandana or a slip lead, or just tying anything around the dog that we could call a collar, even in a leash of some kind, you know, any kind of ropes. They need to be centered, even, you know. We discuss ropes a lot under In the Image Clothing Company. We discuss gravity a lot under In the Image Clothing Company. You know, physics, mathematics, and mechanics. These are the things that the body is. Just a mechanical machine placed onto this rock in space that is our Earth. And so we really get in depth with discussing the anatomy of the human body and the dog's body. Dogs need to look up. Here's the thing. There's another video here under the main side of, oh shoot, it's not the main side. Dante, this is In The Image Clothing Company Poodles, but there's a video here titled Dog Collars and the Base of the Dog's Skull. Okay, collars and the base of the dog's skull. We've got the dogs wearing things, okay? Dogs are just natural until they're not. We domesticate these animals, and breeds didn't exist that exist nowadays. Even the poodle, you know, we specialize in purebred standard poodles, and we're playing into it in the ways that we are, you know, domesticating animals, and we'll breed purebred standard poodles to advocate for purebred dogs, for the health of dogs, to keep less dogs in shelters and more dogs at homes, and just healthy dogs, you know, properly bred before they're even born. Man-made dogs, essentially, I mean, we select breeds, and these new breeds come up, you know. We select specific dogs to breed together is what I'm saying, and we get new breeds, which is crazy that we can do that. So we've got a lot going on, you know. Dogs are never having anything placed onto their bodies in the wild. It would never happen. You'd never have a dog in nature, like a wolf, coyote, fox, whatever it is, you know, a wild dog. You'd never have these dogs have something placed around their neck, you know. The way that we have collars around our dogs, the way that we put leashes around our dogs and leads around our dogs to lead them places, you know. This wouldn't happen in nature. And there's a lot of things going on that are altering the dogs' bodies in our modern man-made world that they'd never possibly have to deal with. And so dogs need to look up. And we'll talk about multiple things in this video on what maybe doesn't allow some dogs to be able to look up in a way that's natural for them. And yeah, a big point is just the collars, you know. The thing is, there's just a natural range of motion, full range of motion. A video under In The Image Clothing Company's main side, you know, for the human beings, but it's the same for the dogs. There's just a full range to all the motion. So we can look up as human beings or dogs all the way, or we can look down as human beings or dogs all the way. Just as far as the bones will let us go. You know, bones in the body, they're only the shape that they are, they're only the length that they are, and same with the musculature. Bones connect directly to each other through ligaments with a thin layer of cartilage between them to just cushion the bones so they don't wear each other out. And then we've got muscles connecting two bones through tendons, and muscles only pull, you know. If you don't, now you do. The human body only pulls. There's a video under the main side of In The Image Clothing Company. We reference that often, and it's just a phrase to understand, because even in what seems like a push, we're pulling muscles on the back side of a hinge joint to extend a hinge. You know, the muscles only pull of the body. And so dogs, they need to look up. Just because there's a natural range to the motion in their neck. That's a big point. But also, we're their owners. And human beings are almost always taller than dogs. Almost always. Man, he's just basking there in the sun. Dante, my standard poodle over here, he loves it. I love it too, man. It's warming up. The dogs need to look up. It's just a natural, healthy thing, right? A full range of motion. You have to have the full range to all the motion that's just naturally there in your body that's designed by God. Or you just don't, and it's altered. You know, there's just only one way that bodies work. And so, if we have something on the back of the dog's neck, a collar, it's just hanging with gravity from the back of the dog's neck, they're just not going to be able to look up all the way if the collar is restricting their motion from just looking up all the way, you know? We've got a video here under In The Image Clothing Company Poodles, where we're at currently, titled, Dog Leads Connect from Hand to Spine. And ideally, our slip leads or the collars and leash combo type thing we're restraining our dogs with need to connect from right out the back of their neck up to our hands. And that way, we're just keeping our dogs in a proper position. And then from there, they can really look up all the way. You know, as far as the leash or the lead around their neck, it's not going to be really restricting their neck's motion if it's coming from the back of their neck where the dog's lifting their head up from anyway, you know. If you don't know, now you do. Here's the thing. Dogs need to look up. We are taller than them, usually, just about in every case, as a human being, as their owner. So they're looking up at us in ways they wouldn't do in nature. I mean, this is the big point, actually, with the fact of dogs being domesticated and looking up, how that correlates, that is different than in nature. Dogs almost always are after prey that's smaller than them. I mean, sometimes no, because they hunt in packs, wild dogs, and so they can take down an animal that's bigger than them for sure, and a lot bigger than them. But, you know, a lot of dogs will be going after prey that's smaller than them in the wild. You know? A rabbit, for example, okay? Mice and rats and a snake, whatever dogs are going to eat in the wild, okay? A lot of their prey is going to be smaller than them because they have to get their mouth around it. And so, yeah, unless they're hunting in a pack and they're all jumping up and trying to get around the neck of a bigger animal, they'll just catch smaller prey because they can see it. You know, they're not having to look up excessively high. They're just the natural sight line. For us as human beings and for our dogs, we just look straight ahead, basically, you know, down a little bit, actually, like at the horizon. These domesticated dogs are looking up at us as human beings, as their owners, you know, and that just changes the curve in their spine, the natural curve in the spine. A video under the main side of In the Image Clothing Company for the human beings. It's the same for the dogs, though. Dogs' spines are horizontal, human beings' spines are vertical, with Earth's vertical gravity pull and its perpendicular angle with its horizontal surface, right? This right 90-degree angle. There's only one way the bodies work. A lot of it's just dealing with gravity. And so the dogs need to be able to look up at us as their owners, and that's already an unnatural angle for them to look. There is this natural sight line. When you're looking just in life as an animal or a human being, well, we have to keep the sun out of our eyes at the top end, but we have to look up from the ground far enough to see where we're going. So we're basically looking out just right at the horizon, forward and slightly down, okay? It's just how we navigate life, and what this allows for is a natural curve in our spine, okay? There's a lot to this, truly. I mean, there's a lot to this. That's why we have In the Image Clothing Company poodles. There's a lot to this, okay? The dogs have a couple things going on. Now they've got this combating thing happening where if they've got a collar placed on their neck that's going to pull them down at all, it's pulling their head in a position where they're going to essentially look down, okay, from the back of their neck with the collar on it. But then we're their owners as human beings, and we're almost always going to be taller than the dog, so they're trying to look up at us. And so we've got the collar pulling down, putting their eyes down to the ground, essentially, from the back of their neck. Then we're standing in front of them, if you will, or even sitting on a chair if you do. Yikes, right? Don't sit in chairs if you want your body to work. Context under In the Image Clothing Company's main side. But we're almost always taller than our dogs, and so they're trying to look up at us. Collar's pulling down. It's this clash, it's this, you know, battle they're doing, when really their natural just sight line in life is basically straight ahead, but a little bit down, you know, just at the horizon, like us as human beings, as I said. Okay, so dogs need to be able to look up, and it's already just an unnatural curve in the dog's neck if they had nothing placed on them just to look up at us as their owners, because we're just taller than them. A dog's not going to be looking up at the angle they'd be looking up at their owners in nature unless they're watching a bird fly overhead, or maybe they're getting ready to go up a hill, but then their feet go up the hill too, so now their spine's basically neutral, you know, because their eyes are going up, but then their feet also go up, and it just straightens their spine back to a fairly neutral position, like climbing up a hill. Anyway, the spine of the dog needs to stay neutral, but the dogs need to still be able to look up. And so, you know, it's not a bad thing for our dogs to have to look up at us as their owners. We're the owners of the dogs. We've domesticated these animals. They need to look up at us to, you know, be given commands. And they just like to look up at us too. Dogs love eye contact, okay? But not only just a heavy collar on the back of the dog's neck But if you've got dogs that have hair, we're in the Image Clothing Company Poodles here. We specialize in poodles, purebred, standard size poodles, the large size of the poodle breed. Dogs that grow hair rather than fur, well, there's a video here under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles titled The Importance of the Proper Length Hair on Dogs. Okay, we need to keep our dogs' hair out of their eyes if our dogs grow hair. You know, dogs that grow fur, you don't have to cut it. Okay, fur stops at a certain length. Dogs that grow hair, it's not natural. Okay, it's happened through selective breeding, the breeds that we've kind of made to a degree as human beings, right? Selected certain dogs to make the kind of dog that we want, really. I mean, the dog grows by itself. God just orchestrates everything that's happening. But we select dogs to zero in on a new breed like the poodle when it happened, okay? They have hair that will just continue to grow unless you cut it as their owner. All right. I get the airplane noise. So if we don't cut our dog's hair over their eyes, the hair is just going to be getting into their eyes, and as they try to look up, there's hair in the way. If we don't cut it short enough for them to just move their eyes around and not have that hair poke into their eyeballs. But this is the other point, is eyelashes. The eyelashes, wow, here we go. There's seriously something in my eye as I'm saying this. The eyelashes on the dog, they need to be able to be there. Okay, we can't be cutting our dog's eyelashes when we cut our dog's hair. That's not okay. It's not our choice. The dogs have no say for this to happen or not. You know, we strap our dogs to a grooming table if you do, or however you do it. You know, you're just holding your dog down and cutting the hair on their face and their head. They have no say against it, really. You know, don't cut your dog's eyelashes. The dog needs their eyelashes to keep the hair on top of their head up out of their eyes so they can look up. Okay, there's a lot of roles the eyelashes play in the dog body, just to keep the eyes safe, you know, from dust and anything getting into their eyes. As us as human beings, we have the same things, you know, eyelashes, to protect the eyes. But not only do we have these filters for the eyes, the eyelashes, and we have this hair on top of the head of the dog that can get into their eyes. We have heavy collars on the back of the neck of the dog. And these things may not be allowing the dog to look up naturally with just the full range of motion in their neck. We feed dogs in ways that are unnatural, okay? As human beings, when we domesticate these dogs and we just feed them food that's kind of different than they'd naturally eat in the wild, and we present it to them in a very different way than they would naturally eat in the wild. We've got videos here under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles about feeding for the dogs as of today's date, the 11th of March 2026. Yeah, feeding dogs naturally, preparing dog food properly, okay? We discussed rehydrating dog food if it's been dehydrated. It's just an unnatural man-made process to dehydrate dog food. So we just rehydrate dehydrated dog food to just try to do what we can to get it back to, you know, normal, fairly close to back to normal. There's just natural water content in any food in nature, meaning any food that exists. The goal is natural on all four sides of In the Image Clothing Company. Natural, neutral, and normal are synonyms within the functioning of the dogs or the human beings. There's only natural. We can make unnatural things from natural things, but then everything always decomposes back to natural. Okay. Human beings, we make unnatural, synthetic, artificial things where we do, but there's only natural. Everything always goes back to natural. We can only grow and be alive and sustained, given energy, by eating natural things, okay? So when we're feeding our dogs, we talk about feeding dogs at the proper height, feeding dogs at head height, you know, right at the top of their chest bone, their breastbone, their sternum, if you will, at the base of their throat, just right below the dog's mouth when they're standing, feeding dogs at a height where they can stay fairly neutral, because the dog has a lot of musculature in its head, in its jaw, in its neck, in its shoulders. and areas around the dog like this that are really being used to rip flesh off animals that they've hunted down and killed in nature to eat, okay? And so this keeps the dog in a proper position as they're ripping flesh off animals to eat, to be able to stand normal and neutral in life, and then all the musculature of their head and neck and jaw and shoulders, it's allowing them to look up. It's being worked and used. But yeah, and also, not only but, what I'm going to say, but also in a very natural position for the dog. They'll be really, standing up and just ripping up and back with their mouth to eat the flesh off the animals they kill. Domesticated dogs, we feed them almost always, I can't speak for everyone, but a lot of the times, I can't even speak for the almost always is what I mean, because I don't know statistically, but a lot of the time, dogs will just get fed out of a bowl off the ground. So the dog's got its head all the way down to the ground. When it's training, if you will, training into an imbalance, the musculature of all these things I'm mentioning, the head, the neck, the jaw, the shoulders, we discuss it like this. We really do talk about gravity a lot under In the Image Clothing Company. It's what we're dealing with as human beings and as dogs. We're always opposing Earth's gravity that's pulling down on us. Otherwise, we just fall down onto the ground, That's just how it works. Musculature, it only pulls, like I was saying earlier. Muscle fibers fire, they get closer together, they contract only. Those are just synonyms for the same thing, just pulling, okay? It's an electrical system of the brain sent through the entire body, and then we have little firings of electrical impulses happening in the muscle fibers, and they get closer together. And what I'm saying is, the dogs have to be in a neutral position of their spine when they're just doing things in life. Like I was saying, natural, neutral, and normal, synonyms within the functionality of the bodies of the dog and the human being. There's a neutral to everything, okay? All the functioning of the body, there's a neutral to it. And this is the same with the dogs as it is with the human beings and any animals across the earth that work very similarly, It is what it is. This is what I'm saying. The dogs need to be in a neutral position, just in general life. Then their body can move up or down. It can rotate, internal or external, just like us as human beings, just in the motion of the body of the dog. Like the head, in a neutral position looking forward, just out at the horizon in life, they can look down with their head, or they can look up. Okay, this video's title, under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, on the 11th of March, 2026, dogs need to look up. They need to be able to, okay? But if we're feeding our dogs off the ground in a bowl, that's just a lower position than they'd be eating in nature. Even if a dog is eating an animal and it's on the ground, which it would be after it dies and just falls onto the ground, and let's say it's a fairly small animal and they're getting their mouth all the way down to the ground, they grab the animal's flesh with their teeth and then they pull up and back. They stand there at a fairly neutral head height, standing position. Yeah, they just stand there. They'll chew their food and they'll look around, make sure no other predators are coming to take their food. And then they'll get more food off the animal and put their head back up again into a neutral position and chew. So the thing with gravity is we've got a center line that meshes with Earth's vertical center of gravity pole. The dogs do too. The sternum, the spine, the trachea, the nose, and the jaw. The same with the dogs as it is with the human beings. The jaw stabilizes the entire body. Okay, there's musculature in the dogs as well as the human beings coming up to the crown of the head, and in the dogs it comes up clear on top of the head. Their skull's just shaped differently, and from breed to breed it varies as well. There's musculature going from the jaw to the shoulders, from the jaw down through the neck into some of those upper ribs, and yeah, the jaw is just stabilizing the entire body. And so if the dogs are using the musculature of their jaw to eat down on the ground, out of a bowl, then they're going to train their jaw musculature and their head musculature, shoulders and neck and tongue. That's a big point too, the dog's tongue. The dog's tongue, just like us as human beings, is one of the muscles of the jaw. It's connecting into the jaw and stabilizing the entire body of the dog. So if if we're not feeding our dogs at a neutral height where they can just, you know, stand and eat instead of bowing clear down to the ground to get to a bowl on the ground and then eating it in an unnatural way because it's just not the same as ripping flesh off an animal in the wild, then the dog will create an imbalance in the musculature of its jaw, head, neck, shoulders, like I'm saying, okay? So we need the dogs to be neutral, just like us as human beings, neutral, okay? And then from there, we can look up or down, we can look down or up. The dogs have a lot going on, okay? There's just a lot that dogs are dealing with in this modern man-made world placed onto God's natural earth, okay? I mean, check out the airplane noise. Unnatural. It's not always bad, but, you know, it is what it is. And it wasn't before it was. It's just a lot of new things that we deal with as human beings that are damaging our bodies. Inventions of human beings, you know. And the dogs are placed into our societies and they get altered, really. Years get taken off the lifespan of dogs. Because a lot of the things that we discuss under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, that's why we're here, to let dogs stay natural. It's for the health of the dogs. So, dogs need to look up. Collars need to be thin enough to where the dog can have all of its range of motion. Even if you have a really light collar, let's say it's centered fit-wise and weight-wise on the dog, there's nothing hanging down from it on the bottom to just be like a little pendulum just pulling the dog around, you know. Dog collars cause barking. A video here under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, and they can, certainly, you know. With something sitting right against the throat of the dog, like a dog tag hanging there, there's a lot of context behind it. But yeah, so dogs, if their collars are too thick, meaning too wide, you know, like the actual band that's going around their neck is just wide, then it's not going to allow all these little vertebrae of the dog's neck, you know, those little bones that make up the dog's spine, to have all their motion to look up if there's just something too wide or too thick right in the way there of the dog's neck motion. Like I'm saying, you know, that full range of motion, it's just got to be there. And if it's not, the dogs can't even look up all the way, and that doesn't only affect the dog's neck, but it travels throughout their whole spine. It'll affect their front legs, their rear legs, the way they breathe. It'll travel out to the tip of their tail, the whole body of the dog, you know, and forward from the neck out to their jaw. That's stabilizing their entire body. If the dog can't naturally just look up, so dog collars need to be, you could say, narrow enough or thin enough, whatever word you want to use to understand what I mean by the actual width of the band around the dog's neck. It needs to be narrow enough to where the dog can look up all the way with the actual motion of its neck without the material of the collar just limiting the motion. The collars need to be light enough to where the dogs aren't having to lift up this excess weight, you know, to look up with their head motion, pivoting on their neck like that, you know? Man. The thing is, anything placed onto a dog is just something they wouldn't have in nature. So collars need to be very snug, very thin, very light, very minimal, centered, balanced, you know, weight-wise and fit. And we'll have In the Image Clothing Company's dog products. And it's not only a sales pitch, it's just us giving information as we do. Like I say, you know, under the gift of video is what we do so much of on all four sides of In the Image Clothing Company. We've got well over 1,000 videos as of today's date on all four sides of In the Image Clothing Company combined. You know, the 11th of March, 2026. We just give information because you can have your own collars or collars from a different brand that's not In the Image Clothing Company, dog products, you know. And we can modify these things just to keep them as centered as we can. But yeah, the weight is a big point. The dogs just are pulling up their own head off of Earth's gravity's pull when there's no collar or anything placed under their neck at all. They already have to just keep their own head up from Earth's gravity pulling down on them. And then any weight we add to the dog at all, placing something around their neck, it's just more weight they have to deal with. And yeah, so there's a lot with collars. There's a lot with the dog's eyelashes needing to not be cut, and then the hair on top of their head that's going to be coming down onto their eyes. We don't want that hair excessively sitting on the top of the dog's eyelashes. The dogs can use their eyelashes to hold that hair from the top of their head up out of their eyes a little bit, if, you know, ideally not though. Really, those eyelashes should be free to move because the dogs will get strained eye musculature. The dog's eyelashes move by the musculature around their eyes. Like us raising our eyebrows as human beings, or us just blinking our eyes or moving our eyes around. This is little musculature all across the face and in the whole eye, you know, functioning of the human being or the dog. There's a lot of little muscles on the face and in the eye socket, you know, in the ways that there is. I mean, the eyeballs actually move, and that's only happening by muscles contracting or pulling the eye around. Okay, that's just how the body works, you know. If the dogs have excessive hair, and really any hair, sitting on their eyelashes, the hair from the top of their head, the eyelashes will have to be holding that hair up out of the dog's eyes, and that's musculature that's being used. And so the dogs will get eye strain, but physical musculature strain of the eyes. That's really what eye strain is in the ways that it is anyway. But yeah, you know, but not just visually straining their eyes, but the actual muscles around the eyes will be strained if the dogs are trying to hold the hair out of their eyes with their eyelashes. So, you know, we're talking about looking up with the dog, whatever breed it is, whatever dog it is. There's a few things here because the eyeballs of the dogs actually need to look up, but then the whole skull of the dog has to pivot up on the cervical spine of the dog, the neck of the dog, you know. But then also just all the vertebrae in the neck of the dog have to move to look up too. The jaw musculature has to be able to stabilize the jaw to look up. The dog's jaw has to close by doing what our jaw does as human beings and opposing Earth's gravity. Coming upward is how the jaw closes, and gravity's pulling the jaw down. So just a loose collar, even again, if it's very, very light, if the collar's on the dog and it's loose, it's just still pulling on the dog's neck. It's got play in it and just sort of sloshing back and forth, if you will, and just hanging down. There needs to be, like I said, the importance of snug collars for both human beings and dogs. The collar needs to just sit nice and snug around the dog's neck, so all the musculature in the dog's neck that's evenly opposing the bone that it inserts to, okay, the spine of the dog, it can be evenly working all around the neck of the dog, even contraction of all the musculature around the dog's neck, so the dog can have that neutral position, and then from there look up or down, like I'm saying. You know, from there look down or up. There's a neutral height for the dog's head position. Okay, the neutral head position, a video under the main side of In The Image Clothing Company for us as human beings. It's just a neutral to everything in the body. Okay, neutral, we go up or down, we go left or right, but there's a neutral. The neutral for the actual bone of the skull on top of the spine is going to mesh with the neutral for the actual eyeballs and their level of looking wherever you could, left, right, up, down, any corner in the actual eye socket, with the eyeballs moving themselves. So this is what I mean. There's a lot going into this because the dogs are in a modern man-made world. The way they eat is differently. We present food differently to them, okay? At a different height and a different type of food. The angle the dogs are looking in commonly is probably going to be almost always higher than in nature when they're domesticated animals, because they're looking up to us as the owners. They're in our houses and in our societies. We've got these buildings that they're looking up at, and they're looking up onto the countertop or the tabletop and just looking up at the things in the houses or the buildings. In nature, they just be looking out over the horizon, you know, just peering out over the horizon with their head at a neutral position. And in that neutral, then they've just got full ranges on either side, up or down. But if the dog's trying to look up just about all the time to see things like us and our societies as human beings, us being their owners, then they're excessively looking up and maybe opposing their collar, pulling them down, if their collar is pulling them down, and not as light and minimal as we can get it to be for the health of the dog. But then they're looking down excessively to eat their food if we feed them on the ground. Okay, so, I mean, this video could be titled The Neutral Head Position for the Dog or something like this, you know. But really the focus is the dogs need to be able to look up, because it's not quite the same as discussing this for a human being where we have things we're doing, holding with our hands, and so we don't really know where our neutral position is for our heads. The dogs will just naturally be in a neutral position. Oh, what? Naturally be in a neutral position? Yeah, that's how it normally is in the wild, right? Natural, neutral, and normal, synonyms. If we never placed anything onto the dog's neck, if we never bred dogs to grow hair rather than just having fur that stops at the length that it would just naturally stop at, okay, if dogs were eating naturally as they were in the wild, still being domesticated dogs though, and things like this and whatever else I haven't mentioned in this video that I'm just not thinking to say right now, or maybe I just don't know yet, that I will know as time progresses, that's, you know, altering the dogs in this way, there's just a lot that's different for dogs that they're experiencing as these domesticated animals that they'd never have to possibly even think about in the wild. They'd never even have the opportunity to possibly have to deal with in the wild. And so the dogs need to be able to look up. Okay. This is a really big point. This is a really big point. We need to pet our dogs, as weird as it might sound, evenly. If you're petting your dog on just one side of their face, just about always, just stroking like the right side of their face, or just stroking only the left side of their face when you're petting your dog, you know, and pulling on their ear, you're going to create an imbalance in your dog. I'm not joking. And I know this out of personal experience with Dante here being the rescue that he is from the South Utah Valley Animal Shelter. He had really imbalanced ears when I first adopted him. Yeah, I'm not kidding, you know. And I mean, this isn't a shock if you know what we do under In the Image Clothing Company with allowing the body to work. We discuss things like the importance of even ears, the importance of not pushing or pulling on the ears, the natural earlobe position. These are videos under the main side of In the Image Clothing Company for the human being. But for the dogs, if we're petting our dogs imbalanced, the dogs need to look up. And this is a good piece of context to give in this video. When you pet your dog, don't let me tell you what to do, right? Don't believe me. Don't believe me. As I say, Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. I'm doing this for my entire lifetime, right? So don't believe me. I could be saying whatever, it could be right, it could be wrong. Don't believe any of In the Image Clothing Company's team members or even any of our poodles with any of our information. I say that because truth is truth. The truth is, dogs would never be pet in the wild, not like they are by human beings. You know, dogs will lick each other, dogs will cuddle together to stay warm and just because they love each other. Dogs don't get pet in the wild, you know, like with your hand stroking your dog. If we're petting our dogs unevenly, we're going to cause an imbalance in the dog's body, truly. Okay? Pulling on their skin and their musculature on only one side or only one part of the dog, if you're petting your dog pretty often in the same area or the same way. But a big point is, we're taller than our dogs. And so if you're petting your dog on top of your dog, on top of their head, on top of their back, you're just pushing your dog down. Dogs need to look up. When I pet Dante, let me show you. Hey, Dante, come. He hasn't been in the video very much, but when I pet Dante, I pet him from underneath, like this. You know, I get like the sides of his jaw with my hands underneath his ears, his ears between my index finger and my thumb, you know, and just pet him evenly on both sides. This is how I usually pet Dante, or I'll pet him like under his chin like this, or, you know, I try to lift Dante up when I pet him, because if we're just petting our dogs and just pushing them down from the top, you know, we're just pushing our dogs down, and that's like mean, seriously. But also, you know, we really can be causing an imbalance in the dog in ways that's damaging to the dog. This is really serious, like deeply ingrained patterning. What I'm saying with the musculature of the dog's jaw going all the way up to the top of their head, we have muscles as human beings that connect to our lower jawbone. It's called the same thing for the dogs and the human beings, the mandible. This lower jawbone, for us as human beings, it's connecting right in front of our ears here to the skull, and then it comes down and forward. It's where our lower teeth connect into. It's hinging down like this. Okay, the mandible. The dogs is the same thing. Okay, it's where their lower teeth connect into, and it's just playing the same function. But we have musculature that connects from that lower jawbone up to the crown of our head, up above our ears, almost to the top of our head, up on the sides of our head. Dogs do as well, but their musculature kind of connects to the top of their head. You know, depending on the breed, the skull shape might be different, the jaw musculature might be different, but the way that a dog's skull is shaped, the jaw musculature, it's really connecting clear up just about to the very top of their head. If you're petting your dog on top of their head, you're actually petting their jaw musculature. I'm not kidding. It sounds like a stretch, maybe. It sounds like, you know, whatever it sounds like to you personally. But this is what we do under In The Image Clothing Company, because with our slogans being allowing the body to work and letting dogs stay natural, In The Image Clothing Company's main side for the human beings, and In The Image Clothing Company poodles here for any dogs across the planet Earth that are domesticated is the point. Any natural dogs are natural dogs, you know, wild dogs. But we have a lot of things we discuss, like the importance of even nostrils, the importance of even eyebrows, the importance of the corners of the mouth, the importance of being gentle with the mouth, you know, things like this, because these are the parts of the body where, quote, posture problems, unquote, get stuck. You know, when we get into chronic patterning, a lot of it's through things like this. And you know, we don't realize it. So for the dogs, yeah, it's things like their eyes not being able to lift up naturally because there's hair on top of their eyelashes, or their eyelashes get cut, so they have to squint their eyes to keep the hair on top of their head out of their eyes. Or, you know, things like this. And what I've discussed in this video, this is what creates patterning in the dog over time. These things would never happen to the dog in nature. And something like petting your dog on top of their head, yeah, you know, you're coming from the top down and the dog needs to look up. So there's a lot to it. We'll give more context where we do under In The Image Clothing Company poodles as time progresses. I am in this for life, to lead In The Image Clothing Company. You know, so we'll talk about this more and these type of things. But the dogs just need to be able to look up. As I'm looking at Dante here with his extremely minimal, thin, light little collar that I have on him, yeah, it's actually just a shirt tail, okay? 100% cotton. It's very thin and light. He's laying down and his whole jaw, his lower jawbone, that mandible, is just flat out on the ground, and there's nothing underneath him besides that really thin layer of shirt tail. Okay, very thin cotton. If a dog's got a thick collar, as they're laying down, it's going to change the position of their head and their jaw and their neck as they try to lay their lower jawbone down on the ground, just like straight out, you know, as their whole throat, coming from their chest up, their whole throat and out their whole lower jawbone, it's all just flat on the ground. If they can, if they're unaltered, that's how they should be able to lay on the ground. Dogs, generally, in nature, okay? Domesticated dogs, though, we place a thick collar on them, let's say, especially if you do have something like something hanging from a dog collar. Never have anything hanging from your dog's collar, ever. Don't. It will alter your dog's entire body, their entire life. If it's noisy, well, the importance of quiet clothing, a video under In The Image Clothing Company's main side. it's just distracting. If there's noise, it's just in the way. If there's anything hanging there, you know, in all the ways that it's in the way, it's in the way. It's just so damaging to the dog. So if the dog's laying down though, and there's just a thickness to the collar, and they can't lay their whole throat down flat on the ground, from their chest all the way up their throat, out to the end of their lower jawbone, like to their chin, you know, that should all be one line, just laying down on the ground. Like Dante is here. You can't see him in the video right now, but what that'll do is cause the dog's neck to be in an unnatural position the entire time they're laying down. If they've got a thick collar under their throat, when they're trying to lay their neck flat down onto the ground, and that'll stiffen up the musculature of their neck because they're still breathing even when they're asleep. You know, it takes the entire body of the human being or the dog to stabilize to some degree in every single breath we take. The whole rib cage is expanding and contracting in 360 degrees. Here's the wind coming again. You know, all the way around, the ribs expand and contract when we breathe. The whole body has to stabilize for this to happen because it's motion in the body that's occurring, okay? And so when the dogs are sleeping or just laying there awake, if there's thickness to the collar in the way of their neck just laying against the ground, even if they're laying on their side, however they're laying, there can't be anything in the way. It's just altering the dog's body, and it creates patterning in the dog. It truly does, because the musculature will stiffen up, scar tissue will build up, because the natural position of just laying out flat with their whole throat on the ground, or the whole side of their neck on the ground, isn't going to be there if there's just a thick collar in the way. There's just something in the way, and that's just how it is. You know, if we place a collar onto a dog, it's a domesticated animal. These things would never possibly happen to the dogs in nature, okay? So the dogs then create patterning and stiffness and scar tissue in the neck musculature and the jaw musculature and the head musculature, into their shoulders, even into their rib cage. You know, their lungs can't expand and contract as normally to just breathe if, as it's happening, they're trying to have to stiffen up muscles to not have that collar be in the way, because it just changes the opening of the airway of the dog. This is not a joke. Not that anyone thinks that it is, but it's shocking to me when I start explaining this stuff, how huge this really is, you know. Yeah, it's just another date-marked documentation. We'll be discussing this for at least my entire lifetime, you know, and if someone takes over after I die and runs in the Image Clothing Company, then there you go. But this is what I mean. Dogs across the entire planet, as domesticated animals, are dealing with these kind of things if we're not intentional. But we don't know what we don't know. We can't be held accountable for what we don't know, but we don't know to be intentional about these things if we don't even understand that it's happening. So snug, minimal, light, centered, fit and weight-wise collars, you know, nothing hanging from them ever. This is what we need for the dogs, and we'll have them available under In The Image Clothing Company for sale, you know. I mean, we're a clothing company after all. We really are. Only to get to the functionality of the human being or the dog, we'd never have to even talk about clothing at all if we didn't wear it. God designed the bodies to work, of the human being and the dog. They just do what they do. They should just function. Okay, it just is what it is. A mechanical machine, as I said earlier. The dogs and the human beings. In the Image Clothing Company, the reason why we're here is because of reasons like this. We're just teaching how to be intentional. We're just giving truth on what's going on. And we'll sell good products that just don't alter our bodies. That's the point of us selling any products like clothing, which we will do once we start doing under In The Image Clothing Company. And it'll be great because we are doing it for the proper reasons. And we discuss things so thoroughly, you know, you would know why you would ever want to purchase In The Image Clothing Company products if you'd ever want to. We give all the context that we give like this. That's the point. You know, the gift, as I say, of video. Anyway, so yeah, the dog will just have stiffness to their neck, scar tissue, and just, you know, limited ranges of motion, trying to just still breathe and still sleep and do all these things that they're doing with a collar on them. And so the stiffness in their neck just limits that full range of motion, and the dogs can't look up naturally. Okay, for a lot of these reasons that I've discussed in this video, there's more I could say, there's more we will say, you know, as we go forth. But But this is beautiful. That's all I need to say for this video, for the amount of context we need here as of today's date, the 11th of March, 2026, In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, spoken by me, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, Evan Strong. Dante, you're so pretty, boy. Anyway, we'll move down to St. George, Utah, Dante and I, within a month and a half or less from today's date, the 11th of March, 2026. That's where we'll be based, as In the Image Clothing Company for life. You know, we'll ship our products out from down there. We'll have our team down there, our beautiful building, you know, for our team to be in. We won't have a place you come to purchase products from. We'll just do it, you know, the ways that we can do it nowadays through technology. It's good in the ways that it's good. You know, we can ship products out. But things like poodle parade events, bring your poodles, purebred of any size or mixed poodles of any size, here to the state of Utah. We live up Utah, as In the Image Clothing Company. Beautiful, diverse nature here. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints headquarters is here in the state of Utah. We'll get people into nature and dogs into nature. Come for the events and why we're doing them. Don't come for In the Image Clothing Company's team. We will do a lot of cool things. You know, subcategories like clean the creek or rid the rubbish, specific poodle parade events, picking up trash for the environment, doing things for this beautiful planet Earth God gave us. Seriously, I mean, we're gonna do a lot of cool things as time progresses. We already do a lot, but as our team builds, we'll have more opportunities to be able to do things that we can't really do just as Dante and I. As of today's date, we're the only two team members under In the Image Clothing Company. You know, the 11th of March, 2026. So stick around if you'd like to, stop back in if you'd like to. We give a lot of free information for the human being, for your dogs. As I say, everybody who has one, or everyone who has a body, we're all the same. There's a universal human design. Even the dogs, from breed to breed, they're all very, very similar, almost the exact same, you know, anatomy-wise, the actual functioning of the dog. So we just do what we do here, and we do a lot. We discuss, like I was discussing a little bit earlier, you know, keeping less dogs in shelters and more dogs at homes. We will breed purebred standard poodles, and we'll do it under the gift of video to show. It'll be fun to watch if you think it's fun to watch. Cute puppies, you know, which is great. But really the reason we're breeding is to advocate for the health of purebred dogs and why it's so important. Mixed dog breeds, it just about never possibly even happens in the wild. You'd have to have a different dog, like a coyote breeding with a wolf, you know, and that just rarely, just about never happens. Mixed dog breeds, it's become something that people think is okay, and wow, that sounds harsh if you don't have the context on what's really going on, but it's extremely unhealthy to mix genes like that. We select the dogs we want to breed as human beings. We do it unnaturally. It's already unnatural just to domesticate a dog to begin with, and there's just so much going on. So we need context to know what's going on. We say phrases like a mutt is a mutt. It's just saying a mixed dog breed is a mixed dog breed. It's like saying truth is truth. You know, it is what it is. It's unhealthy though for the dogs. Big time. That's a lot of reasons why dogs end up in shelters, is because health complications come up through improper breeding done by human beings with selective breeding. You know, or just unplanned, unexpected litters when dogs just kind of haphazardly have puppies together in ways that's just unnatural under human beings' care. And then a lot of times health complications come up because of it, and you know, it's more than the human being wants to spend to try to, you know, have the doctor fix it, the veterinarian, the animal doctor. And so that's a lot of reasons dogs end up in shelters to begin with. But then just also, you know, temperament things that you can't expect when you're mixing different breeds together. You get part of the temperament from one breed and part of the temperament from a different breed. It's unnatural, you know. You get dogs you can't even expect the outcome of how the puppies will act or be or look or live, if they'll be healthy or not. So, you know, we're not being offensive here. Well, we're saying whatever we're gonna say. I don't care. We're not trying to offend anyone intentionally, necessarily. Under In the Image Clothing Company. But we say things that are so bold and harsh because truth is truth. Yeah, we discuss, man, holding leashes naturally as the owners of dogs, so we don't alter our bodies, you know. There's just a neutral position to the body, and we just need to stay in it. So, yeah, it is what it is. The height of dogs versus the height of owners. So we don't alter our bodies getting down to these really small dogs. That's another point for this video with dogs need to look up. really small dogs. I was saying how dogs are looking up more in our societies as human beings and under the care of human beings as their owners than they would naturally in the wild, just looking straight ahead. Well, another thing with this, discussion we have on how it's just unnatural, the dogs we have nowadays, these small little dog breeds we've bred to, there's no dog breeds that are that small in nature. I mean, don't let me just say some blanket statement, but no, there's no dogs that are that small in nature. Dogs have to be big enough to take down an animal, to kill it, to eat. And these little, really small teacup size or toy size dogs, they're smaller than any wild dog would ever be. Take that with a grain of salt without actually measuring every wild dog that has ever existed. But yeah, they're smaller than wild dogs. And that's already just hard for them to exist. Just going over small little rocks is hard for a dog that we've bred down in size as human beings through selective breeding. It's unnatural, it's unhealthy, it's hard for the dog to just exist because they're so small, I mean, just going up a staircase for a dog that stays puppy size, if you will, do you see what I mean? Their entire life. Yeah, there's a lot to this. In the Image Clothing Company, poodles is huge. Always has been, always will be. It's not about me. It's about the truth of God. I don't get to decide these things, right? Truth is apart from all of us. But that's why we're so huge under In the Image Clothing Company. We're doing all we can to not have any opinions on anything. We're imperfect, opinionated people, right? But truth is truth, and we're just trying to align everything we do with truth. The truth is these things that I'm discussing. The dogs would never deal with this stuff unless we did it as human beings, and that's unnatural. The truth is natural. There's no unnatural until we do that as human beings, right? There's only truth to life. We don't get to decide it or change it as human beings, but we do change these dogs' entire existence when we domesticate them and selectively breed them. So small dogs, excessively small dogs, they're looking up excessively high to look up at their owners. If you've got a toy size or a teacup size, whatever you want to label it, just a really small dog, like 10 inches or under tall, very small dog, unnaturally small dog. And I'm not, trying to be mean. Some of these dogs are so cute, and these dogs can still be healthy in a lot of ways if bred properly and taken care of properly, but it's unnatural. That's the truth. And the point is, they're looking up so high for the little dog to look up at you as the owner, to make eye contact with you. And then that's just amplifying anything like this that we've discussed in the video that's already making it hard for the dogs to look up because they're domesticated. Things like collars placed on them and anything else we could say, that we're doing to the dogs as human beings, even just through breeding, if you see what I really mean here. See what I'm really saying, because this is huge. The dogs have to look up excessively high if they're just a really small dog to look up at the owners. I'm going to get up. We've got 4 sides to In the Image Clothing Company. In the Image Clothing Company podcast, we're on episode 204 as of today's date, the 11th of March, 2026. We have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ. You don't have to believe in anything or be religious, but we're all human beings, the same thing, placed on the same earth, designed by the same God. There's a universal human design. It only is what it is. There you go. We just give deep insights on life there. We've got In the Image Clothing Company music, where we show the sizing and setup of guitar to not alter things like that neutral wrist, straight out the pinky finger from the outside of the forearm, and the natural rounding to the hands that correlates with the arches in our feet. We do rhythm and poetry, lyricism, spoken word, singing, guitar playing, music geared around the gospel of Jesus Christ with the messages. So anyway, we'll do a lot of cool things. Come to events if you'd like, but also just check out our videos if you'd like. Purchase our products if you'd like. We're not about sales by any means, but as I was saying, truly the only reason we'd sell anything is if it's purposeful, beneficial, and actually very helpful, because we've got a lot of things that are actually so damaging. These rocks are not very comfortable to sit on. Speaking of damaging, I'm not damaging my body. It's not so comfortable. Yeah, we've got just a lot of collar designs, leash designs, harness designs, slip lead designs even, anything clothing the dog in any way that is imbalanced, even rotated seams and things for dogs. We talk about a lot of free modifications in the Image Clothing Company's rotated seam modification for us as human beings, but anything placed onto the dog that just needs to be altered, well, let's not use that word because that's not the word we use. That's not how you would explain it. What I mean is anything that's altering the dog that we could place onto them that we need to modify, or any way we're having our dogs' lifestyles be structured that we could modify to let the dogs stay more natural. That's where our slogan comes in here under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, with letting dogs stay natural. The airplane noise, man. Unnatural. Anyway, it is what it is. Is Dante right behind me? Yeah, he's laying back there. There you go. I will give information that I give as time progresses as the founder of In the Image Clothing Company on what we can do, because there's a lot we can do. You never have to purchase anything if we can modify things to make them work. We're not about sales, truly. I mean, I want to make that very clear. I mean, we'll advertise our products when we have them, and they'll be great, but it's just about what it is, you know. Do everything dogs, do everything dog products, do everything clothing under In the Image Clothing Company. That's how we'll breed our poodles. That's how our products will be. We want to just be able to do everything, just be able to live a well-rounded life. And if the dogs just can't naturally look up, it'll create patterning not only in their neck, like I was saying, with scar tissue, not only in their jaw, but then that travels throughout their whole body. The body's only work activated as a whole. All the body's there. It's all got its own individualistic role to play. Everything in the body has a different function than everything else. And so it has to work all together. It can't compensate. Things can't try to make up for other things' roles in the body if things are damaged and altered and not working proper. If the dogs can't look up naturally, they can't make up for that motion by bending their low back or something. Do you see what I mean? The dogs just have to be unaltered, or they're altered. If they're altered, their lifespan can decrease, their quality of life decreases. You know, they'll eat more because their bodies are struggling to work. They'll be dehydrated because their bodies are struggling to work. And there's a lot of things like this that go into this. And so, just to be very clear, there's a lot that goes into just the dogs needing to look up. A huge focus under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles is the clothing for our dogs, you know, meaning collars or leashes, harnesses, things like this. Not necessarily clothing like a shirt. Ideally, never put anything like that onto your dog unless it really is to keep your dog warm or something like that, you know, a functional reason. And then be very intentional to not restrict your dog's range of motion with it. Yeah, anyway, and have it be in all the ways you can, made from 100% natural materials as well. That's a big point. Yeah, unnatural, synthetic, artificial materials, they just didn't exist even tens of years ago from today's date, the 11th of March, 2026. So 100% natural materials, staying centered, fitting correct clothing, you know, for human beings and dogs. That's how ours will be under In the Image Clothing Company, but just in general too, yeah. Anyway, there you go. It is what it is, and what it is the 11th of March, 2026. Just know that there's a lot to this. What I'm saying is things placed onto the dogs are one of the biggest focuses here. We do a lot, you know, we discuss eating, sleeping, standing, walking, sitting, breathing, hydration, everything we do as both a human being and a dog. It's not just about the things placed on us, but the things placed on us are the things we're doing everything through in life. Everything you do in life as a human being or a dog, you're doing it through whatever's placed onto you, clothing your body with something, you know, so. It is what it is, and that's all it is. So don't get it twisted. Don't think we're doing something we're not here. Okay. Anyway. Golly. Thank you, Dante. Good dog. I'm gonna just go do what I do. And then you'll watch this video back, and then we'll post it publicly on the internet for every human being that could ever have the possibility to see it. To be able to see it, because we're just discussing the truth of God. We don't get to decide things that matter. Dante's a good dog though, so come hang out. It'll just be so fun. St. George, Utah, that's a big focus. Location wise, right, the state of Utah will do a lot, and it'll just be great. So come have a good time. Meaning, if you want, just involve yourself with what we do, because it applies to you, as we say, everybody and their dogs, literally, okay? I don't know if there's anything else I need to say in this necessarily, but just see Dante's collar, how it's just not against the base of his skull or the back of his ears, which is the same thing essentially, and it's also not against the top of his shoulders. You know, just very thin, snug light, minimal, and he's awesome. Oh, Dante, what a good dog. Okay, thank you, goodbye.